Hi there, this is Tony from pianotone.ca. So if you follow my channel, you probably already know that I have never been very impressed with Bluetooth MIDI in any keyboard that I've ever reviewed. Some are definitely better than others, but there's always still too much lag and latency for me to ever bother consider using it to actually try and record MIDI. I'd always just use a cable connection instead. Well, the products I'm reviewing today have changed my mind on Bluetooth MIDI. Today's review is on a couple of products from CME's WIDI lineup of wireless Bluetooth MIDI products, the CME WIDI Master and the CME WIDI Jack. So what's so special about these products? Well, these devices use SCA technology to optimize performance and minimize interference, which is a technology I fully admit to knowing absolutely nothing whatsoever about. But what I do know is that this results in really low latency when transmitting wireless MIDI using Bluetooth 5. And this is also going to transmit any MIDI message over Bluetooth, so not just the notes that you play, but also CC messages, MIDI clock, SysX, and MPE. And when you use two of CME's devices, so basically one at the sending end and one at the receiving end, you can apparently see latency numbers as low as 3 milliseconds, averaging 5 milliseconds and no higher than 10 milliseconds, all of which are incredibly low, nice, super fast latency numbers. So with all of this low latency in mind, I was really interested to test these products out, mostly for my own personal use case, which would be to use a MIDI controller wirelessly on stage with my Yamaha PSR SX720 keyboard. So full disclosure, CME was good enough to send out review units for these two products for me to check out, but I am going to be giving you my honest opinion in this review. So with all that out of the way, let's check out the WIDI Master and the WIDI Jack. Let's start off with the WIDI Master. Okay, the CME WIDI Master. First thing, update your firmware. When you get your CME WIDI Master, follow the included instructions to download and update your device to the latest firmware. That basically involves downloading and installing the CME WIDI app for iOS or Android, and as soon as you connect your WIDI Master to a keyboard's MIDI port, it's going to immediately appear in the app, and then you can update the firmware. To be honest, this was actually so fast, easy, and seamless that it really gave me a good feeling about how well these devices were going to work. Okay, so the CME WIDI Master consists of two parts. Both of them have 5-pin MIDI ports on them. The main part is the out port. So you're going to connect this to the MIDI out of the device that you want to send MIDI from. And then the MIDI in port is optional, which is really cool actually, because a lot of the time you're only going to really want to use the MIDI out to send wireless MIDI to something. So that keeps you from having to have this other little thing dangling around if you don't need it. But if you do need it, you just plug it in to the out, and then you connect the big one to the out and the small one to the in. The other cool thing about these is that they don't require any power, because the one that connects to the MIDI out port will get power from your keyboard. And the MIDI in, if you use it, gets power from the MIDI out. So that's actually really awesome. A lot of the competing products have batteries built into them, so you have to actually charge them before you use them. With these, you don't have to worry about it, so that's super cool. Okay, so let's take a look at using the CME WIDI Master in a little bit more detail. So I am not super technical. I'm not an audiophile. I'm not a MIDI specialist. So I'm not actually going to be able to measure lag in it right down to the millisecond or anything. I'm just going to be judging the CME's performance based on whether or not I can detect any lag, whether or not it's either undetectable enough to me or small enough that I would actually consider using it to record MIDI. So with that in mind, I actually wanted to start with a baseline example. This is going to be my Roland Go Keys 5, which has Bluetooth MIDI built into it, connected to GarageBand on my iPad. So I'm not using a CME device here. This is just kind of trying to get a baseline. Now, the Bluetooth MIDI on the Go Keys is actually probably the best Bluetooth wireless MIDI that I've come across in a keyboard that I've tested. It's actually got a little bit less lag than any of the other ones I've tried, but it still has just enough lag to make it unusable for me. Now, to try to come up with an example that's easy to demonstrate, I've got a beat set using one of the built-in drummers on GarageBand. So this is basically a drum being hit on the first beat of every measure. So if I go back out and I look at this in a little bit more detail, because this is being generated by the app, it's of course going to be perfect. So you can see all of those lines are right lined up against the actual proper timing of the beat in the sequence. So that's going to be perfect. Now what I'm going to do here, I've got a piano chosen. First, I'm going to use the on-screen keyboard to try and play in time with that. So just on those quarter notes. So let's check that out. Probably not perfect, but let's just take a look and see. Okay, so that's not too bad. There's some that I'm a little bit off, of course, but you can see for the most part it's lining up reasonably close. Now let's mute that. Actually, before I mute it, let's listen to it along with the beat. So not too bad. Let's mute the piano track and let's go to a clavichord and let's try that with the Roland instead of the on-screen keyboard and see how we do. Let's take a look at that. First, let's take a listen. So it sounds like the notes are a little bit late to me. Let's zoom in here. So yeah, so if you look really closely at the lines there, you can see instead of like the piano one where I used the on-screen keyboard, they were much closer to those lines. So that's going to be that latency that we're talking about. Now let's actually go back out here and let's just unmute the keyboard, the piano. Let's unmute let's mute the beat so we can just listen to the piano and the clavichord together. So the piano is the one that I used the on-screen keyboard for, and the clavichord was the one that I used the Roland. Ooh, start over again, sorry. You can tell that those are just a little bit out. And just one more example, I'm just going to mute the piano again. Let's just go back into the clavichord. Now I'm going to turn on the Roland keyboard sounds, which is going to be set to a piano. So now the piano you're hearing is coming from the Roland, and the clavichord is coming via wireless MIDI from the iPad. I don't know if you can hear that. I can hear that. It's just slightly different. So let's see how the CME WIDI Master compares. Okay, so now I've got my Arturia Keylab Essential MIDI controller connected using the CME WIDI Master, so just the out portion connected to the MIDI out on the MIDI controller, and that's connected to my iPad using the wireless being provided by the CME device. Now I've got a electric piano set up here. I can already just tell just from that I'm not getting any discernible lag, but let's go do the same test that we did. So I'm going to mute the clavichord, going to unmute my drum track, select electric piano, and let's give this a try. Okay, so first let's just use our ears and take a listen. That sounds pretty much bang on to me, other than my playing. Now let's take a look at the actual detail here. Okay, that actually looks really good. It's not going to be perfect because I'm definitely not perfect, but you can see how this is actually even better, I think, than the on-screen keyboard, which kind of makes sense. The on-screen keyboard's not terribly easy to use, but there's virtually no discernible lag in there. There's a couple where I might have been late, but that's not because of the WIDI Master device. That's because of me. But for the most part, these are bang on. So let's go back out and let's unmute the clavichord, because that was the one that I used with the Roland, just to compare the two together. And I'm going to mute the drum track, I think. Let's take a listen to this. You can hear a big difference there, and that's going to be that lag. So now just for a more kind of real world kind of test, I'm going to add in a drummer here. I'm just going to take whatever the default settings are for that. So instead of just a single beat, I'm actually going to get the drummer to play along with. And I'm going to mute that clavichord and get rid of my piano track or electric piano track, go back to the start. And I'm just going to go in here and just play along and record. It cycled around there because I didn't set my GarageBand project up with enough bars, but let's just go back to the start. Let's just take a listen to that. That sounds really, really good to me. And keep in mind here, we're only using a CME device on one end. So with that in mind, remember I had said earlier, if I had a CME device on the receiving end as well, it's going to be even faster. So, but even with this, that's a drastic difference from the Go Keys keyboard wireless, and I would be totally fine using that to record. Now, if you're wondering how you can speed that up even more by also having a CME WIDI device on the receiving end, given that your computer, iPad, or phone doesn't have a 5-pin MIDI port, well, you can, but for that device side connection, you're going to need a different CME product. More on that in a little bit. Okay, the CME WIDI Jack. So how is the CME WIDI Jack different than the WIDI Master? Basically, the WIDI Jack provides the exact same main function, which is connecting to the MIDI in and out ports on a piece of hardware to enable a wireless connection. But the WIDI Jack is not limited to just 5-pin MIDI ports. Basically, the WIDI Jack can be used with different cables that you order from CME that attach to the WIDI Jack itself. And you can get these cables with different types of MIDI connections, because even though 5-pin is probably the most common, there's also different sizes of TRS MIDI in and out jacks. And there's also the kind of jack that you're going to see, for example, on my Yamaha Reface, which is a 6-pin kind of a mini MIDI jack that then uses a breakout cable like this to split MIDI into the in and out. So if I was going to use the CME devices with my Reface a lot, I would actually, as well as these 5-pin cables, I would also get the cable that is compatible with the Reface's 6-pin port. So then I don't have to use the Reface's breakout cable. I can just use the cables that come with the CME device. A couple other things to quickly note. You might notice on the side of the WIDI Jack that there's a USB-C port. FYI, this port is not meant to receive USB MIDI from a device. Like if your keyboard doesn't have a 5-pin MIDI out but does have a USB MIDI out, you might think that you can connect it to this and have the WIDI Jack transmit wireless MIDI. That's not the case. What this port is for is actually another feature that the WIDI Jack has that the WIDI Master does not. So what is that extra feature? Well, remember I mentioned that the WIDI Master is powered from the 5-pin MIDI out port on your hardware. Well, not every device does provide power through that port. So for that situation, the WIDI Master is not going to work. But the WIDI Jack solves that issue by including that USB-C port that you can use if you need it. So if your hardware does not provide power over its MIDI port, then you can grab power by connecting this USB-C port to a power source with a USB cable. So you might think, isn't the whole point of wireless to be wireless? As soon as you need to provide power to the CME jack, doesn't that introduce cables again? Well, it does, but you can also quite often power a device like this with a USB cable from one of your keyboards, or you could also use something like a little power bank. So it's not like you have some big long cable stretching out to a wall plug or something. You've got some options there. And one other quick note, when you unpack your WIDI Jack, you're going to see one of these. And when I first saw that, I'm thinking, I didn't think this used batteries, but this isn't a battery. This is just a magnet with a sticky backing on it. So I can peel that off, stick it to the back of the WIDI Jack, and then I could, using the magnet, stick this to like my keyboard stand or something to hold it nice and secure. So that's all that this is for. Okay, so now we're going to demo a couple of scenarios using both of the CME devices together, so the WIDI Jack on one end and the WIDI Master on another. Let's check that out. Okay, now for a couple of demos that are a little closer to the use case that I'm actually interested in, which is to use two CME devices together. In this example, I've got my Arturia Keylab Essential connected to my Yamaha PSR SX720. I've got the WIDI Jack connected to the MIDI in and out ports on the PSR SX720. Note that my keyboard is providing power through the MIDI out port, so I don't need to connect a USB cable to the WIDI Jack to provide power. It's getting it from the Yamaha. For the sending side, I've still just got the MIDI out portion of the WIDI Master connected to the MIDI out port on my Keylab Essential MIDI controller. And since the Keylab is also providing power, I'm fine just using the WIDI Master here because it can get it from the keyboard. Let's check this out. I've just got a piano voice selected on my Yamaha. I'm not detecting an ounce of lag there. It's pretty much instantaneous. Let's turn some drums on here. I'm going to play a bass line down on the Yamaha, which is, of course, going to have no lag. And then I'm just going to try and play like regular beats up on the MIDI controller. Once again, I'm not hearing any lag whatsoever. Let's turn some accompaniment on and try this a little bit further. I'm going to finger chords down here and then go back and forth. That's absolutely fantastic. Zero lag whatsoever and totally usable. Okay, so just another quick demo for you. I've replaced the Keylab Essential MIDI controller with my Yamaha Reface keyboard. So I've still got the WIDI Jack connected to the in and out on the PSR SX720. And now I'm going to try connecting just the WIDI Master, just the out portion, to the Yamaha Reface, which, as I mentioned earlier, the Reface actually has a 6-pin single port MIDI connection that you use those breakout cables to connect to 5-pin MIDI in and out. So this is the breakout cable that came with the Reface, not the one that the CME can provide if you choose to buy one. Okay, so I am getting a flashing light here. That does seem to be working, but one thing I have noticed, and I have a feeling it's got something to do with the breakout cable on the Reface, is that the piano will occasionally cut in and out. This is the Reface triggering the piano sound on the PSR SX720. It's not cutting out now, and it seems just fine, and there's no lag. Great connection, but if it did start to cut out on me, then basically that's where the WIDI Jack can come in. So I'm just going to demonstrate that. Just in case you have a keyboard that isn't providing power, I have a feeling there's some issues with how the power is getting supplied with that breakout cable that came with the Reface. But either way, let's switch these up. So I'm going to move the WIDI Jack to the MIDI out on the Reface, and then I'm going to power the MIDI Jack with a little power bank that I've got here. And then that way it's guaranteed to be getting power. And then I'll just move the MIDI Master in and out into the PSR X720. Let's check this out. Guess I'm just going to connect the out right now into the Reface. And now I'm going to connect the WIDI Master, both the out and the in. So I'll hook these back together into the Yamaha. So let's see if we're getting a connection now. See, now that's what I'm talking about. The WIDI Master, see, it was cutting in and out there. So I have a feeling that's to do with the power. So let's use the USB power bank to power the WIDI Jack. Okay, so now it's getting power from the power bank. So now that's fine, and there's no lag on that. which is fantastic. But what we can also do here, though, is let's connect the MIDI in to the reface as well. Okay, so that's still working fine. The reface is triggering the sounds on the Yamaha. But let's turn the reface organ up. So you can hear the piano that's coming out of the Yamaha PSR, and you can also hear the organ, which is coming out of the reface. So now we've basically got a two-way connection between these keyboards. So if I play the PSR SX720, you're also going to hear the organ because it's sending MIDI out to the MIDI in on the reface, and then vice versa. It's also a good example of how there's basically no lag here because both of these are sounding at exactly the same time, regardless of which keyboard I'm using. That's super cool. Okay, so other CME WIDI products. Remember when I mentioned earlier that CME also has solutions for connecting devices together that don't have 5-pin, 6-pin, or TRS MIDI ports? So devices that only have MIDI USB ports. Well, that's where the CME WIDI Host and WIDI Bud Pro come in. The CME WIDI Host will act as a MIDI host for your USB MIDI device. So with this one, you could connect it to a USB MIDI out port found on keyboards, and now that keyboard has wireless MIDI. Or you could also connect it to a computer or device to use instead of that device's built-in MIDI. Then there's the CME WIDI Bud Pro. The WIDI Bud Pro will connect to your computer, tablet, or phone with any necessary adapters and upgrade that device's Bluetooth to the super fast CME version. So what's missing? Nothing really. These products not only perform extremely well, but they are very well thought out and very well implemented. For example, being able to unplug the cables you're not using from either one of those devices is a really nice touch, so you don't have extra cables hanging around. And while you can get away with just one of these devices in many situations, like connecting a keyboard to a computer or connecting one piece of hardware to another one that has Bluetooth MIDI already, keep in mind that if you've got a CME device on both ends, that will maximize your connection speed and minimize your lag. And it also makes the connection super easy and automatic because when you've got a CME device at both ends, they just find each other immediately without you having to do anything. So for my use case, having one WIDI Master and one WIDI Jack is pretty much perfect. That allows me to connect any 5-pin MIDI controller to my Yamaha PSR SX720, regardless of whether it provides power through the MIDI port or not. I will probably add a WIDI host to round out my collection, since that is going to cover me for connections to my MacBook and my iPad as well. So the verdict. This is an easy verdict. The CME WIDI products are awesome. Well thought out, well designed, easy to use, and they perform. I can totally recommend checking out the CME WIDI products. And I would recommend, to be completely honest, getting two, one for each end. And if you are going to do that, I mean, you need to look at what kind of ports your hardware has and buy the correct cables. But I would recommend getting exactly what I did, which is one WIDI Jack with whatever cables you need if it's not 5-pin MIDI, and then just the WIDI Master with the 5-pin MIDI for the other side. And if you're going to use this on a device like a computer or a tablet or something, and you want the wireless MIDI at that end, then get either the WIDI Bud Pro or the WIDI Host as well. So if you want to check out current prices in your area for CME WIDI Master or any of the other products that they make that I talk about in this review, please click on the links below to check those out. And I've also included links, as always, to online piano training that worked really well for me that I could highly recommend. So thanks so much and happy Bluetoothing. Have an awesome day.